So Hut 8 Mining has 80% share of American Bitcoin, and Eric Trump has 20% of American Bitcoin. So Hut 8 Mining is a mining computer company, and they also can create energy platforms like power plant designs to help crypto mine. So it's basically a crypto Bitcoin mining company. So you got to understand, Trump put Bitcoin to inflate the treasury. In other words, to inflate it in order to peg stable coin to it. So they can inflate Bitcoin, and then mine for crypto Bitcoins, and then incrementally deplete the shares, pump and dump, but launder the American Bitcoin into stablecoin, and then launder it through world liberty. So in other words, Trump always intended to profit off the petrol industry throughout the Middle East for Exxon, Texaco, Chevron, all located in Texas, and the Stargate super farm computers controlled by OpenAI and Oracle and SoftBank. And so this American Bitcoin, that's 20%, belongs to Eric Trump, and the other 80% is by Hut 8 Mining. You would think, when I first heard the name, I thought it was a fossil fuel company. But I heard somewhere they had some diversification in the fossil fuel industry, but I could be wrong with that, meaning Hut 8 Mining. But they're really trying to tailor themselves around Bitcoin in order for Eric Trump, to siphon off the Treasury Department, while Trump is creating insider trading, terraforms, and leveraging payouts through NFT cards, meme coins, through World Liberty, and now through American Bitcoin. Eric Trump is a strategist of the company, in charge of strategies. He has 20% shares, and 80% shares belong to Hut 8 Mining. And like I said, they have a location in Texas and a location in New York. But basically, they're revolving around Bitcoin. And that's how Trump leeches it off externally through world liberty, using his Trump, now Eric Trump, inside this new company venture of American Bitcoin. And they want to inflate it to $1 million per Bitcoin. But like I said, they need to take incremental payments, and it can't just be $1 million per time, because it'll look like they're money laundering. It will look obvious if they start to buy $1 million Bitcoin every time, the exact amount. So for that, they put in stable dollar, so they can put any type of crypto nomination and peg it to the dollar amount. So stable dollar for dollar, ciphering off Bitcoin. And externally, Trump launders it into world liberty. He gets his cut, his share of the pie. And so Trump was head over heels about Stargate, super farm computers. And I'm pretty sure this idea of American Bitcoin with Eric Trump has been in the works ever since he come up with creating Stargate. I'm pretty sure this American Bitcoin probably not located at the same location, but probably near enough to share the workload of mining for cryptos. And trust me, Stargate is not going to be the. You think that the corporations won't use that Stargate super farms to mine for cryptos because the dollar is being dumped? And the dollar is going to have a run in the markets sooner or later because Trump's global tariff wars and runaway inflation, when that kicks in with stagnation and recessions and the devaluating of the American currency, greenback, the corporations are going to want to diversify away from the greenbacks and seek shelter in cryptos. And try to make global trading deals through blockchain technologies that is not dependent on the greenback. Because the greenback will lose his purchasing value, purchasing power. Anyway, so Trump is trying to profiteer off of that. And it was Trump that started the whole thing of devaluating the dollar by offending every nation global economic systems, by extorting them with tariffs, extorting every nation on earth for tribute. It was Trump that pushed the dollar off the world at the top of the heap, the top of the mountain. It was Trump that pushed the dollar off the cliff by raping every nation for tribute in the forms of tariffs. And so when you extort our allies 20%, 50%, 25% for Canada, Europe, you broke up Britain's economy with Farage to try to backstab Britain to take over Canada. You're trying to take Greenland. You're sabotaging France with tariffs, Germany, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Saudi Arabia. You're tariffing every nation on earth to enrich himself and his robber baron friends. And so now they know that the dollar is being dumped globally. And so they panicking the American banks, central banks, the American hedge funds that owns all the American corporation industries. And so they want to ride out the storm by decoupling from the dollar once the dollar starts to have weakened as far as PPP, purchasing power parity. When it starts to weaken to the point that it's worthless currency, by that time the corporations hope to be all in crypto binary chain ledgers and journals, book of accounts that can be floating in cyberspace instead of pegged to the greenback. They will only come back to the greenback once we get over the collapse of the economy. And once the economy stabilizes, then that's when these companies and the banks will start to repeg themselves to the greenback. But for right now, there's a movement to depeg for the greenback with American central banks, American corporations, hedge fund companies. And so that's because Trump raped every nation on earth for tribute, like a mobster extorting every nation by tossing a rock into their merchant windows unless they paid for protection rackets in forms of tariffs, especially Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, NATO, from 2% to 5%, and then 15 to 25% to the European Union. So Trump has extorted every nation on earth, and the Federal Reserve and the central banks know that the writing on the wall, that Trump is going to cause a runaway inflation. He's going to cause a recession, a depression, and maybe the purchasing power will plummet like Zimbabwe $1 trillion notes. What used to be an American dollar bill will be considered a $1 trillion note just to buy a loaf of bread. or a can of soup. And so Trump is like trying. He created this pyramid scheme, this Ponzi scheme, because nobody wanted to lend to him for his real estate because of his committing Deutsche bank fraud, mortgage frauds, real estate fraud. So they created this Ponzi scheme of World Liberty, Trump NFT cards, right before the 2024 elections. And they created this idea of putting Bitcoin inside of the treasury to inflate it, so it could be $1 million per Bitcoin, and then leak it out through stablecoin, and Trump can leech off of it externally through World Liberty cryptos. But now Eric Trump has gotten so cocky that he created his own American Bitcoin with Hut 8 mining company. They specialize in power plants that are designed to produce a lot of energy for crypto mining computers and super farms. But I'm pretty sure Stargate has something to do with mining cryptos too, for these corporations, for the American banks. So that's why Russia says that the American economy is going to depeg from the dollar because the dollar will become worthless. And that's how you get out of the $37 trillion debt. Because you dump the dollar, turn everything into cryptos to stabilize your ledgers and your assets, and to maintain your international tradings by keeping your crypto private from peeping eyes, while the greenback becomes worthless. And that's how they inflate their net worth with cryptos. And then when the $37 trillion is paid off with worthless American currency, because everybody will be having basically $1 trillion in Zimbabwe American greenback dollar bills, the politicians, the banks, the bankers, and the corporations and hedge funds, they know that Trump caused all this calamity, that Trump caused all this fiasco. But when Trump is removed from office, when his supporters are in soup lines and bread lines, and Trump and Lutnick are trying to be robber barons inside the treasury with cryptos, Trump will be overthrown by his own base of supporters. And when he's removed and his movement is eradicated from politics, that's when the bankers will start to come back and stabilize the American currency, the greenback, and start to invest back into the American currency. And the American currency might be able to become stabilized again after Trump fiasco is removed from politics. So they're hoping to move everything to cryptos to ride out the depression. And then when Trump's base overthrows Trump because everybody's in Skid Row, then when we get new presidents and the Trump movement is totally ridiculed off the national stage and off the world stage, that's when these American hedge funds, the bankers, the American central banks, the American corporations, that's when they will start to rebuild the trust in the American currency again. So in a way, they're hedging and securing their assets by decoupling from the greenback, because they know that the whole world, meaning Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Europe, Canada, Mexico, they're all dumping the dollar little by little. So the American corporations and the central banks of America and the hedge fund companies and all the CEOs of the corporations of companies throughout America, they know that we're going to go into some financial tough times because of Trump's global tariffs. So it's their way of inflating cryptos to maintain their industries, but to ride out the weather. So when the dollar is like worthless, when Trump is his base overthrows Trump, when Trump's base overthrows him, because everybody's on Skid Row, and when Trump movement is ridiculed off the American history books and off the global stage, that's when the Federal Reserves and the central banks and the American corporations will start to reinvest in the currency and rebuild the purchasing power of the currency. So in other words, when Trump plummets the American economy because all nations on earth dumps the greenback because of his tariffing every nation on earth to extort wealth and tribute to his likeness as the American president. He thinks that he controls the world reserve currency, that world petrodollar. He's tariffing the world 100% if they dare unenslave themselves by holding American reserve currency, petrodollars or greenbacks. So he's extorting Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Canada, Britain, France, Germany. So everybody knows the writing on the wall. All the banks, all the American hedge fund companies, they know that the dollar is about to plummet. Right now, the dollar purchasing power is around the same time when Nixon decoupled from the gold standard because America couldn't pay their debts. So the corporations want to hide their wealth through crypto mining computers. And when Trump is pushed out of power by his own supporters, unanimously, the Americans will have enough of Trump and get rid of him and destroy his political movement. That's when stability will start coming back to the American currency. That's when nations will be able to start to open up, trusting America again. When Trump is totally pushed off the global stage and his movement is destroyed. When his base turns against him, when everybody's in soup lines and bread lines, and his base is the first one to line up to overthrow him. When America is united against Trump, and America's economy is plummeted because of Trump's fiasco. So, in other words, when Trump movement is eradicated off the American stage and off the world stage, that's when the central banks of America and the hedge funds and governments abroad will start to try to normalize trading with America again. Once Trump is ridiculed off and vanquished in the ash heaps of history. In other words, soon as he's forced out of power and his movement is destroyed because of him embezzling and bankrupting America with his greed of tariffing and extorting nations, when he is eradicated off the stage, his movement is totally eradicated, and his own base wakes up to reality that he was a con artist from the first day to the last day, when they all standing in soup lines right along with the Democrats, the Republican base. That's when Trump is forced out of power. That's when the America will start to normalize trading negotiations to rebuild the trustworthiness of our currency with Europe and the global South. And that's when the economy will start to stabilize and gain purchasing power, parity power again. But Trump's only been in office for 8 months. There's basically a year and 4 months to go. 3 years and 4 months to go in his administration, his second term. So I think he's going to sooner or later escalate a recession, a stagnation, a stagflation, and a recession and a greater depression than the first if he keeps on pushing his luck.